and welcome to this week's episode of Not D&D, brought to you by EN World. This week we have a revisiting guest. We have Tanya Floker back to talk about their new crowdfunding campaign. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah, and as it's January, I'll say the Happy New Year as well and all that. So really excited to have you on to talk about Chums, the slice of life role-playing game. Previously, you've been on the show. We're talking about some of your other games. So your background and history of games is all in there in 2024 if people are interested. So instead of the usual questions about, you and your history of games, I might jump right into talking about this game if that's all right. Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, so what is Chums? Just to introduce it to everybody.
Hey, the sort of strapline on it is Chums is a slice of life game about the people who care for kids. Mm-hmm. So your main character, the main sort of your sort of main sort of role play drive is going to be as probably a mum, but maybe a dad, maybe a grandparent or a kinship carer, maybe a step parent, or some other sort of someone else. It could even be like a member of the extended family, but someone who's the primary carer, especially a person who sort of drops off at school, picks up at school, gets everything ready for a child who's about 4 or 5 years old as the game begins. So we've skipped over the sort of the very young infant years, the baby years, and we're starting just as the kids are going to start school.
Wonderful.
So it builds from there.
Great. So, I mean, an obvious inspiration for me was like you being a parent yourself. So I don't see many tabletop RPGs that are focused on like the parenting and raising children. So what was your kind of inspiration and why did you want to choose this topic for a game?
Okay. I guess you've mentioned there's not many games that talk about parenting, or at least not in a more sort of kitchen sink drama sort of way. So you might have like a game of D&D where somebody's got like the baby in the pushcart type situation, or something a bit more fantastical, a bit more Baby Yoda. Okay. Whereas I wanted something that sort of got to the heart of sort of the small moments of real connection and real empathy that I'd felt, and also the sort of difficulties and struggles I'd felt as a parent and that I'd seen around me with my other chums. And just I didn't want to focus it on the very early years, because it can be when you've got a baby, things are changing so quickly all the time.
Right.
The phases are just so you're just getting into the swing of things, and then it changes again, like your schedule changes, sleeping changes, feeding change, everything like that. And it can also be quite a more acutely traumatic time because of those changes, and because of things like even just struggles around chest feeding and breastfeeding can be like real, or like medical trauma surrounding pregnancy can be quite harsh. And so I didn't want to go into something that was quite so laden with very, very, very sort of difficult topics to handle well.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think most people can imagine like caring for a 4 or 5 year old upwards. And so I think if you can imagine being an elf or a space ranger or some strange other thing, they can imagine being a carer for a child at that age. I think it's
yeah. I was going to say, because I think this is obviously a game that is obviously again appealing and interesting to people that do raise children, but for people that don't, like myself, for me it's something interesting because I'm somebody that doesn't care for children, and I love using storytelling and tabletop role-playing games to explore those sorts of things. So I saw this for me as an opportunity as somebody that doesn't have children to kind of peek and walk around in that world and imagine what that's like. So
yeah, 100%. Role-play games are great for being able to sit within another viewpoint in a fictive space, in sort of a fiction, but still to build up a little bit of empathy and understanding and maybe reach out. And yeah, I think it's 100% that for folks who've had kids or have kids, I think it could be a little bit cathartic.
Yeah.
And for folks who haven't, it could be a way of building empathy with why the parents are needing that catharsis.
Absolutely. I think it's so interesting because I think for me, I'm in my 30s, so I'm in that time of life where my friends, some of them are having children and at different ages, and some people don't, and there's such a variety of different people in that space. So I think it's a really interesting topic to look at. So digging into the game, so what sort of we know what it's basically about, but what is the stories we're telling going to look like? Like, what's the kind of theme of the game, and what does a session look like?
Okay, so the structure of the game doesn't come out of thin air. It borrows heavily from games that have came before it. Okay, so the first thing you'd notice as you're creating characters is that you create your own adult character. Okay, the carer, the parent, the mum. Okay, and each of you create these characters going around a circle, and then you decide what your relationship is with the person to your left.
Okay.
So if I'm like, if it was me going to you, I could say, well, let me have a think about this. How do we know each other? I know you hired me as a dog sitter. I do some dog sitting work locally, so I can fit it in around childcare, and that's how we know each other. And then you could go to the next person and maybe say that, oh, that's my best friend, or they're a neighbor, blah, blah, blah. So you end up with this sort of like, this comes straight out of a game like Fiasco or some such, where you've got this sort of circle of relationships where you're connected with the person to your left and right, but you don't have a direct connection with the people on the other side of the circle. Okay, but overlaid with that sort of like is another relationship map, because you create your child, and your child has two relationships with two other random children.
Okay.
So it isn't just left and right. It could be across the table. It could be someone.
Okay.
So you might not know what's going on there entirely. And as the game opens, we've determined what our relationships are. We don't determine until the game is running what those relationships are going to be. All we know is that one of them is a nourishing relationship, and the other one is something that has some sort of struggle or difficulty or some sort of challenge attached to it. And so that's all we have at that point. And during play, as that opens up, we start to explore. When you're creating your character, you sort of set what your housing situation is, and to sort of show what sort of life's sort of style you're living within, what sort of class positionality you're in, sort of on a social level. And you also determine something that you're struggling with yourself. And that could be to do with parenting. It could be just a big life thing happening. You could have court dates looming. You could have like a family member that you've fallen out with. It could be anything. But so each of you have your own personal struggle. You have your relationship with your child. You have your children's relationships with one another in the circle of relationships. You've got all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so when play starts, it starts with a vignette of you with your child on the first day of school. Okay, any point in that day. And you go around and each have a little chance to have a vignette to highlight the parent-child relationship. We then keep going round, and we each have a scene set within the first term of the school year. And you can pick at any point across that whole term. So there's no need for the scenes. In fact, anytime I've played it so far, the scenes don't ever seem to run one into the next. They all seem to be like moments across time, because there's a larger time to play in and only one round of scenes. People pick out the moment they want, and you pick from those relationships and other story elements that we've put down on the table. We also put the school in the middle of that, and have that as one. We basically pick out where we want to focus that scene. So each person gets to set the scene, determine who's in it, while we play our own characters and we maybe play the NPCs or assign them to other players, the other players collectively decide what the children are doing. You never get to decide over your child and their behavior.
Like in real life.
And then it's a bit like the game Archipelago, where there's some key phrases. I've got 8 key phrases that people can ask to sort of drive the narrative. So the narrative unfolds through freeform role play, but at certain points people could ask things like, could you go deeper into that? One of the questions is like, should we end the scene here? Because it could be a good place just to wrap things, even if it isn't people wanting to carry on a bit more. And there's also things that are a little more direct, like breakdown, like, or the opposite of that, of sort of like put your mask on. So this sort of like things that happen to parents could be put in as prompts by the rest of the players, and so you roll with those and you play hopefully in a sort of collective spirit. It's not a winning game, it's a storytelling game. So yeah.
I see. So it sounds very kind of freeform, very narrative. So for some, I know for me, I kind of love those style of games and things. I know for some people, they haven't approached that style of role-playing games before. They're used to something a bit more structured and with like more dice and more mechanics to kind of influence the direction of play. Would you have any kind of advice or kind of guidance for somebody that wants to try something like this for the first time?
Absolutely. I would say sit down with the game and remember that the game does have mechanics. It might not have some dice rolls. It might not have a list of stats. But what you do have is you have all the story elements that those mechanics and stats would be leaning on. Because if you're swinging a sword, you're basically telling the story of swinging your sword, and then you're rolling your strength, or you're rolling your dexterity, and those are the stats leaning on top of that. So in a sort of more guided freeform game, if I'm the things that are leaning on them rather than dice rolls are going to be mechanical prompts. Like I'm saying, that you've got these prompts that you can give to help shape the story. And rather than rolling a dice, you're waiting to see what someone else does with that prompt and then react to it and bring that all together. And so go in if you're sort of used to having mechanics, and then you're suddenly in a situation where you don't see a recognizable mechanic. Understand the game part is still there. It just might take a slightly different form. So go into it, give it a try. Most people will try different board games. Most people will give different card games a go. So role-play games are the same. Give it a shot, see how it goes. Try it a couple of times.
For sure. Just going back to the mechanics of the game, though, I realized I didn't ask like how many players is it for, and it sounds like there's not a specific game master. It's all quite collaborative. Is that right?
Yeah, it's no games master. It's for 3 to 5 players. I feel like you need at least 3 for that sort of circular take on the relationships to really work out. You could probably play it with more than 5, but I feel like it might stretch the time between scenes a little bit further. If your group are okay with that, I'm sure you could go ahead with it, but I say 3 to 5. A game session lasts between about 90 minutes and 150 minutes, like hour and a half to 2.5 hours tops. Like
nice.
The sort of time that you'd have as a parent, maybe to squeeze in a game.
Oh, right, I see.
Rather than a 4 or 5 hour mega session, which isn't going to happen.
Fair enough.
Unless you're going away and the other parent or co-parent or grandparent is taking on the caring responsibilities.
That's true.
Yeah. But, there's mechanically one other sort of big lever to the game as well that I've put in there, and that's the cuppa scene.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So again, I've borrowed this from another game. I'll leave it to the viewers to guess where this has come from. If you know, you know. So at any time during play, you can a player could call not during the vignettes because they're personal sort of care or child scenes, but anytime during the main scenes, term time scenes, a player can lean over to the middle of the table where we've placed a cup. They can pick it up, and this indicates that play stops and that we're cutting to a cuppa scene. Now, this is set in the future, near future. The person with the cup is talking to someone off camera, someone we don't know, someone uninvolved. We never see who. And they give a monologue about what was happening in the past, the scene we've just cut from, their take on it. They're sort of gossiping over a cuppa. And so they can add in extra details, either filling in backstory, internal monologue, internal world, or start talking about what's going to just happen in the near future. And then once they've finished their monologue, we cut back to where we left off. So this can be used to sort of inform play. And sort of, it's a very similar to sort of flashback mechanics you see.
Yeah.
But it's a flash forward, then flash back. And it gives a sort of commentary on what's happening. So
yeah, no, I like that. The game feels through descriptions very British as well. Was that intentional? The things with the cuppa and it being around like British term times, it feels incredibly British.
I do say that in the description that I've wrote it from my own perspective. I've talked to other parents in other parts of the world, and they've sort of said that it seems pretty translatable. It's not like people go off and have hot beverages and chat elsewhere.
Sure.
People have term times that might have slightly different terminology here and there, like but like break and holiday or what have you. But there's not a huge amount of difference. I do put a couple of pages together about homeschooling and home education, and how you could use that instead of the school structure. And I put in a few paragraphs about sort of alternate modes of play, or sort of ways in which you can slightly change all the things, because the default structure is one carer and one child. You might want to have two of the players having the same children. You could have multiple children, twins, how that plays into it, the sort of unique relationship maps you might want to make using these different familial structures.
Fab. And going back to kind of the structure of the game, you mentioned so we kind of started the session the way we'd kind of build our characters and make the connections to the left and the right, and then across the way with the children's relationships and things like that. We'd have our vignette scene between the carer and the child, and then we'd have those group scenes in kind of term time. So I'm guessing there's a number of those scenes for the number of terms within the year.
Yeah. Yep. So what happens is you have one round of vignettes for the first day, one round of first term scenes. Then you have a round of vignettes set in the autumn holiday. Then a round of scenes for the autumn to winter term. Then a set of the winter holiday vignettes, and you carry on up until the summer break, where you have a final round of vignettes. Now, normally that's where most groups will want to end, either midway through the year or all the way through. But then I suggest playing 1 to 2 sessions is normally about right. You could carry on and play until the children become adults and play like a whole sort of 6 sessions, I guess. Or 6-7 sessions for primary school, and then carry on into high school. But I feel at that point it'd be a different game. The relationships are very different.
Yeah.
And so I probably need to make a supplement for that. But
teenage years. Yeah,
teenage years are very different to the young years. Having been through those as well, like that'd be a
I've heard it's a different game.
Oh yeah, well, it's funny because it's a different game, but some of the tantrums are very much like the tantrums of a 2-year-old, just very much more verbose. It's it's got similarities, but it's a different thing. So yeah, I think you could do all the primary school. I misspoke there. You could do all the primary school, but maybe you'd need some sort of supplement from just 12 till adulthood.
Fair enough. And so with the playtesting and the games you've run, what sort of stories and narratives come up when people play the game?
Just people having like watching their kids having relationships with other people's kids and trying to just do the best by them they can, and people occasionally having small fallings out or like miscommunication or being speaking from a place of ignorance to one another, and then like seeing how that affects each other's lives, because you zoom sort of out and in, you can have a sort of scene where two characters are sort of like grinding against each other politely, and then zoom into the future where you sort of just determine, oh well, whatever was going on there, it's moved on and they're acting in a sort of a friendly manner again here. And so it's quite interesting because you get this sort of like little zoom in, zoom out, the real slice of life stuff where you're just sort of seeing what goes on. And so some of the moments are really beautiful, where you get moments where folks are like so proud of their children, little moments where people are feeling embarrassed or sort of like struggling with feeling like bad parents or feeling like ashamed of things going on around them and how they deal with that. I guess this sort of links back to when you asked me what my inspiration for the game was and where I came up with some of the ideas. It did come back to sort of moments where like I'd be turning up at the school pick up or drop off, and I'd see another like parent there, and I'd see they looked like terrible. They looked like something was really badly happening, and sort of just going over and reaching out and asking how they were, and then those small moments where you're sort of like you're just there for one another, because I know other parents have done that for me. They've checked in on me, make sure I'm doing okay, and it's really interesting to see that happen when I'm playing with, like, I'm maybe at a table with nobody else is a parent, nobody else is sort of in that headspace or had that experience, and then you see it play out between two people who aren't parents, and it's sort of like, from my perspective, that's kind of why I made it, because it's like, oh yeah, they get it, that like the actual instinct about what to do in this situation is, it kind of just comes out, and those moments in life are sort of beautiful or bittersweet or sort of joyous or magical or sad. And so yeah, that's what seems to come out with the game.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so beautiful. I mean, I love that about slice of life games, because I mean, there's so many role-playing games that we want to play sometimes where we go to fantastical worlds and do amazing things. But sometimes in slice of life, you find these really amazing stories and moments that are just, from every day, which is a really gorgeous thing to see, like you say. Another thing I did want to touch on is like kind of safety tools and things like that, because I think, whenever we do a horror game or something like that, we always think, oh, we should check everyone's boundaries and stuff. But I imagine in a game like this with parenting, there's the potential, because people can have quite complicated feelings about, parenting and things like that. So do you have any guidance in the book or your own words about how to approach that with this game?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the sort of the very new move of sort of like moving. I've seen a few people moving away from talking about safety tools and moving towards conversation tools as the term to use, which I think is really an interesting. It's a slight nomenclature change, but it reminds me of, like, I think it was described to me as like, remember when we went from talking about trigger warnings to just talking about what content will be within a piece of media, and using that sort of framing and how it's changed the conversation and the sort of temperature of things. So with this is the first time I've really started to sort of, just rather than sort of being like, make lines, make veils, those things are still there. The game has recognizable veils, lines, a sort of X card, or like script change type conversation, but I do it in a far more conversational tone than I had in the past. Obviously, given explicit, sort of this book has mention of certain topics which can be upsetting, but at no point in the book do I sort of go into a deep delve in any of them. It's just not needed to play to run the game or to understand it. So I think using that sort of outlook of conversation tools, and the whole game is a conversation tool. Like when we're making scenes, we've been told by the book how to frame scenes for this game, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Unless we all agree we're going to do it differently. Obviously, I'm not going to be at someone's door to tell them how to play my game. But assuming they just want to try the game as it's written, it's all a conversation tool. A roll to hit's a conversation tool. So I feel like from the sort of safety mechanics, it doesn't make it safer. It makes it's better for us to understand that when something comes up that's upsetting, how we're going to behave. We've got like a little bit of a conversation about what we're going to do and how we're going to support one another. And I think that's good.
Yeah. That seems really nice, and it seems to suit the theme of the game as well, because it's all about those conversations and parents, supporting each other through things like that. So, I really like that approach. That's a really good answer. So, if people have been listening to this and they're interested, I believe it's coming to Kickstarter soon. You're crowdfunding the game.
Yes, February. I'm going to pop it up as part of Kickstarter's Zine Quest promotion. So. Starting in February, and I'll run it for a couple of weeks. So pop on there now. You can join the sort of pre-launch notification button, and then get a wee notification. And hopefully, if you've liked anything about this, I've been curious, back it, give it a shot. That's it. I've also got a free version up on Itch at the moment. It's missing a couple of the prompt tables. I've put lots of examples in there. There's a couple of example tables missing, but if you go on there, you go into the Kickstarter page, you'll be able to find the itch page. But if you head on there, you can actually download the bulk of the game and give it a try now and see what you think of it. So
great.
Where to go?
Yeah, and by the sounds of it, because there'll be like digital options and maybe a print-on-demand sort of zine option be available.
Yeah, but I'm going to do a sort of perfect bound zine as a print option. Also, I'm going to do a little fold-out handout that you can put your cup in the middle, and it'll have all the prompts listed. So you've got a nice wee visual reference. And I'm still, as of this moment, I'm still deciding whether I'll actually want to get Mum Chum mugs made up, but shipping them internationally is a little harder, so I'm looking at options there. But,
yes,
I thought an actual mug for the cuppa scene would be quite nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. I like the idea of that as well. That sounds good. So what sort of stages is the game in now? So because sometimes when people back a crowdfunding campaign, they, what sort of timeline will people expect to be able to have the digital version or the physical version?
The digital version should be ready at the day that the Kickstarter closes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. After that, it'll be waiting on the funds clearing. I might look into, depending on how the funding goes. I'd originally planned for this to have someone else doing the layout, but I think the way things are looking with the sort of the amount people are backing things at the moment, everyone's a little bit more skint, I think. So I might have to revise my budget on that, but we'll see. So it might be the PDF will be ready right away. The print version shouldn't be too far behind. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, so you can start playing as soon as the campaign ends. So that's really good. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing Mum Chums with us. I'm really interested in it. It's definitely something I'll be picking up. And if anyone's watching or listening, if you go give it some love and support on Kickstarter, that would be really great. Thank you so much. Yeah. Before I let you go, Tanya, though, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on other tabletop RPGs. So do you have any recommendations for any other games people should check out?
I do, and I came prepared.
Wonderful. You've been on here before. You know this game.
I've been on here before. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got 3 recommendations. Okay,
Wonderful.
I'll whistle stop through them. So
Mhm.
this one is Wraithlands.
Mhm.
This is by Lecky. Lecky is a Glasgow-based designer who has made this spectacular melding of sort of like it's got something for any type of tabletop roleplay gamer, I feel. You're playing wraiths, which are these people who have died on the island of Nalona, where death has been forbidden by the lairds of the Underkirk, and so they've came back to life, and they're doing things that are illegal. They're not meant to be doing that, and you sort of take it from there. It takes a lot of inspiration from like the sort of the clearances in the Western Isles. It takes a lot of inspiration from sort of central belt of Scotland and the Highlands as well, and it has a sort of like, if you like OSR type stuff and sort of the Free Kriegspiel type stuff, you'll really dig the background and the way in which it's got like loads of like a big hex map and lots of setting sort of information for you to go rummage in. And if you like a more sort of fluid story game feel to it, you'll dig the mechanics a little more, I feel. I think you'll like the fact that it sort of sits in this nice sort of space that's pulling from all different sort of role-play game traditions in an interesting way. So 100%, this is my one to watch for 2025.
Wraithlands, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Next one is slightly, not a few years old, but I'd still go for Red Carnations on a Black Grave. This game is spectacular. This is a game about you play, each player controls 2 different characters during the Paris Commune.
Okay.
Those that don't know, this is an event where basically a crucible of socialism, where a part of Paris was had barricades erected around it, and the commune was declared. And different branches of socialist thought all sort of trace some lineage here. So anarchist thought, sort of more authoritarian socialist thought, the Jacobeans and what have you, they all come back into this sort of like melting pot of revolutionary activity. Unfortunately, they were crushed. Most members were killed, and so out of the 2 characters you have, these are historic characters. You can look them up in history books as well, but you don't need to know their history to play them. It's very well done. One of them will die, and the other one may die or may have something else happen to them. So excellent game, lots of good story prompts, and for a historic game, very contemporary themes through the sort of like discussion and the stories that you tell. I find it exceptionally queer, in fact. Final one is a game I haven't got to play yet. This is unusual. I normally don't recommend until I've played, but this is gorgeous. It's Zephyr. It's a big chunky box. Okay, it's an anarchist game of fleeting identities, and the box is gorgeous. It's got this dark purple moody cover, and it comes with like a huge map and loads of tokens and board bits, and it just looks gorgeous. In the book, I'm not even unwrapped the book yet because I'm just still, this is going to be my next big treat to myself. It's like, oh yeah, so gorgeous. So I don't know how it plays yet, but I've read the PDF, and I'm going to treat myself to going through the book and plotting out a game of it at some point this year. So
sounds fab. And if people are interested in hearing more about Zephyr, they are coming on the podcast next month in February. So we'll have a deep dive into the game so people can learn about it if they're interested. But yes, it looks very pretty.
I'll look forward to that episode then, because that'll be a bit roundabout when I'm planning on playing it. So nice.
Perfect. We can come on and ask questions then, because that'll be a live interview we're doing then. So come and jump in. All right. Well, Tanya, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. It's always lovely having you on and hearing about your games. wish you all the best for Mum Chums, and looking forward to seeing how well it does in crowdfunding.
Okay, thank you.
And that's sorry.
I was just going to say, and I hope you have a really good 2025 with the show.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm already having a great time. I just love getting to talk to different designers and hear about games. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's watched and listened. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new tabletop RPG to talk to you about. Thanks very much. Bye.